Hello, good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain Uso.
Good morning, I'm Neo Taigbe.
And I'm Ayamakinde. Good morning. Today is December 4. It's a Monday morning, and it's the first Monday in the last month of the year 2023. Welcome, I'm Ayamakinde.
Whatever time it is, December is fine. I'm okay with that. So just tell me it's December, that's good. It gives you that good feeling, good vibe.
What makes December different from the other months of the year?
Well, it's a December to remember. It's always a month to remember. So you always want to put your mind in the right place and see that your body, everything follows through with that one. But guys, some developments making the rounds over the week. Protests here and there concerning the courts. And there's been several reactions. Well, yes, you see that of Kogi. And then in Kano, all of those scenarios. And of course, there's been a lot of focus on judges to the extent that many seem to paint everything with one brush. But the unfortunate incident that occurred in Kogi State is something that causes or should concern everyone, who's anyone, because you never can tell how that could spiral. Do you know all of those concerns about ensuring that the umpire is also seen to be such? Because when that elections came through in Kogi State and all of those, there was a lot of frustration for certain people who thought, how could officials of the commission be the ones to be caught with already pre-filled ballot papers? And you expected several agencies, the appropriate agencies were expected to kick in and do what they have to do. And you know that state has also been a state to watch, one to watch for this election in terms of how people conducted themselves. But you get to hear when people tell you, well, at least in terms of deployment of security, there was a lot of improvements. They were in different areas. But for this to happen, guys, it just gets you really thinking. You don't know how many other people might be thinking the same things in terms of if they felt hard done by. But what we do not want to see is people being frustrated to the extent that they take laws into their hands. Now, because, I mean, when you hear people say, look, I'm not going to bother going to court, what do you expect that's going to happen in that kind of case? Look, it's already been skewed, it's been fixed. Well, that may be their reality. Of course, that may not necessarily be the case across, but how people perceive all of these things in society is immensely important. Now, we don't know those who are behind this. I hope the authorities, security agencies will be really on this and move swiftly, because no matter how aggrieved anyone is, you cannot be allowed, you should not be taking laws into your hands. The system, society should never allow that to happen, or else we'll be degenerating into massive chaos. Because you can then imagine if this were the case and then there's another elections coming through and people feel, look, I better do what I have to do now because I will not have any hope of getting justice. So I might as well help myself. So when that begins to be the narrative and it pervades the system and several other persons who are down there who don't know any better how the system works, owing to the fact that they listen to their leaders, whichever leader that is, and they tell them these kind of narratives, look, that is not what we want to, that is not what we should be promoting. So a lot will rely on the security agencies and the system because, look, none can work in isolation. Even if you arrest, you have to prosecute. And they have to be seen to be brought to justice. So all of that should serve as a deterrent to anyone else who might have any of those stuff. Look, no matter what we may think about the police, the judiciary, as it is everywhere else, you always have bad eggs who will do certain things. But the system now needs to rise. Our political leadership, they need to also rise. They need to, that's what we keep saying, leading from the front. Because you can't say one thing and you do another. It will be contrary to the message that people want to pass across. So it is important, and those kind of scenarios doesn't happen.
You know, Chamberlain, just penning down some things coming through my mind. INEC is like the proverbial most desired bride, yet the most, not the most amount, yet the rejected bride at the same time. So everyone's looking to INEC for a decision that would help move the country forward. The electorate, the politicians, indeed the entire world, looking with the electoral umpire, is seen to have done what it's supposed to do when it's supposed to do it. That's what lies around INEC. But then some will say INEC is overburdened. INEC will conduct elections. INEC will supervise the political parties. INEC will regulate this, INEC that. And then the tools that INEC needs to work with are not clearly put out to say, okay, this is what you're supposed to do. INEC is given the free hand to say, as the electoral umpire decides. So INEC decides, takes its actions, and now there's a call out to INEC. Hey, INEC, you're not doing a good job. Did INEC know that all of this was expected of it? Is a question. Was INEC aware of all the expectations from around the world, from the people about it? Now, the other side is also the judiciary that comes in to say, okay, INEC, you messed up, or you politician, you messed up, this is the final one, and everybody has to go, because most of our elections have been decided in the courts. In fact, if we've had 1,000 elections in this country, less than 100 were decided outside of court. Most of them are decided in the court. And even at that, it takes a long time. Taxpayers' money going into these. Cases that should be attended to, not attended to, because we're looking at electoral matters. The lawyers are enjoying it. The electorate is not enjoying it, not in any way. But the question then is, why would anybody want to go to INEC? Okay, burn INEC's properties, burn their facilities, or attack the resident electoral commissioner? Would that in any way change the results? But I asked the question last week, and I said, when you see people protesting over and over and over again about the same thing, is it not time to step back and look in and say, okay, why exactly are they protesting? Is there something I am doing wrong? Is there something I can change? Should I realign myself or rearrange myself so that I can do differently? These are all questions that INEC will need to answer. The politicians will need to answer this. Even the electorate will also need to look at, okay, how can I prepare for the elections and go voting in a different way to ensure that I get the results that I desire? Everybody needs to sit back and look at how to change things. Otherwise, as you said, we'll keep going down this spiral. And at the end of the day, we'll be wondering what happened to us. Also, when we come to the judiciary, I do know that there are sometimes they'll tell you that the judges take certain decisions, give certain rulings because they are looking at the consequences. They're looking at, if I take this side, based on the evidence before me or based on technicality, whichever way you want to swing it, there are repercussions that we might not like. And then they'll tell you, for the peace of the nation, this is the decision we're taking. They may not state it clearly like that.
And that part is the mixed part, because, I mean, there are times that, look, if you take your case to court and you don't argue your case properly, of course, and somebody else argues better than you, of course, you will lose.
Exactly.
So when you then, from then, go elsewhere and then begin to spin a certain narrative that you lost because of certain things, of course, you know, that is also a challenge. Not saying that that is what happens or happened in any particular case. This is speaking generically now, on a broad-based scene now, such that people don't think that, oh yeah, that is always the case everywhere else. So certainly not. But how to properly situate that now, that's a good point.
I know how you will come in, but I just want to put this in there that what is good for the goose is good for the gander. So if you're saying this on this particular matter, for instance, the judiciary, some of the decisions they've taken, they want to tell you worked for this side, didn't work for this side. Please, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Aya.
Well, I think the goose and the gander here, in my opinion, or from my own perspective, would be the National Electoral Commission and the State Independent Electoral Commissions, because it seems that we tend to turn a blind eye, or we don't pay as much attention. You know, a number of people have said, look, if we have a situation, if we can decentralize INEC, just as you guys have been having that conversation around the other time, if we're going to decentralize INEC, exactly what are we decentralizing? We've had guests here who have discussed the fact that, look, in other climes, particularly in the country which presidential system we tend to copy, they have situations where there are Supreme Courts all over the country. And even in their state elections, is it conducted by their own INEC? I mean, that's one thing that we need to also have conversations around. Why should the INEC be the one conducting elections into the state houses of assembly? So perhaps we need to give a little more attention to the state independent electoral commissions and see how much power we can give to them to conduct certain elections, particularly at the state level. Maybe that would help in one way or the other. But, you know, Chamberlain, speaking about how come, and speaking about how come things get destroyed and things like that. Dr. Sam Adeyemi, a leadership consultant who featured here some time ago, I attended this leadership conference where he said something in a conversation with one of his mentors that armed robbers, should they have an association, will not elect a policeman as their president. They will elect one of them. So to the question of why we have the kind of brigandage we have concerning or around our election or electoral apparatus, ask the question why. Do we have the kind of brigandage when you're looking for a job at any organization, any private organization, even a public organization? So why the brigandage? There has to be something. There is something attractive in that regard. People don't break glasses and break down houses when they are looking for a job, even a civil service job. So why this one? There has to be something. Perhaps it's a good idea for us to look in that direction as well. Why do we have this kind of brigandage concerning our election or electoral apparatus? Let's ask those questions. Glad to know that the Senator Ali-led Electoral Matters Joint Committee talking about some conversations around electoral reforms and all of those things. We have asked the question, what's going to be different this time around? They've decided they're going to go to every ward. Granted, fine. We're waiting for how that is going to be productive and change the game going forward. We have elections, in the near future. November next year, we're having an election into the Edo State Governor's, office. So, how that is going to affect anything? Is that electoral reforms thing going to be done by then? Are we going to test some of the resolutions at that event? Those the electoral law and the concerns that have been raised around certain clauses and provisions of that law, are they going to take effect to ensure that we don't see the kind of things that we see now? Why do we pay so much attention to INEC at the national level, covering 36 states and more than 100,000 wards and polling units, beg your pardon, polling units, not wards, and we do not have that same kind of conversation around state independent electoral commissions? I think there are more questions, guys. What do you think?
Well, certainly. So, all right, that's it, guys. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of the dailies this morning. And we're going to start with Vanguard newspaper. It's a matter that they'll pick up from the meeting in Dubai. Uproar over Nigeria's 1,411-man delegation to COP28. FG didn't fund all COP28 delegates. Presidency. Obi, LP, blast Tinubu, say high delegation waste of taxpayers' money. PDP demands roll call. Cost incurred by FG delegates. Asks NAS to commence probe. UK commit £100 million to assist Nigeria, others. So, of course, this continuing from yesterday, reactions about that meeting. So we'll focus on that as we progress here as well, hopefully. So just keep it with us as we progress. And then you see this at the bottom strip. Nigeria's economy begins major shifts as oil sector rebounds. Yeah, that's also here. And then they have this at the, just beneath this story at the strip. Jakba, we interviewed over 150,000 Nigerians for visas in 2023, ascribed to US. So you can imagine payment of all of those visa fee, which is non-refundable. So you see, they're equally smiling to the bank. And while, of course, not everybody can cross the line or get their requirements, as it were. So that's what you see right here. So that will be it for Vanguard today.
Daily Trust newspaper tags on to that story as well. The outrage over Nigeria's contingents, 1,411 delegates to COP28. That's how they captioned theirs. But see the riders they had. Tinubu has turned climate change conference to Owambe, credited to Atiku. It's waste of resources, says Obi. It's outrageous, insensitive, CSOs. Government-funded contingent less than 100. Presidency. PDP demands refund of ESTA codes, asks National Assembly to investigate delegation. Well, you go to page 4 to get more details of that. Quite a lot of things to look at. But let's, on this side of that picture, there is a blue box. NSCDC personnel brutalize Anambra journalists. Say media is Nigeria's problem. Brutalizing anyone in itself is not acceptable. You can still do your job as a security operative and still respect the rights of the next person, or respect the person as a human being. But to say that the media is Nigeria's problem, I hope we can find that NSCDC personnel to come and tell the world how the media is a problem. No, he shouldn't be telling
the world. He should be facing the law.
I'm telling you, tell us how the media is a problem.
For persons who are carrying out their legal, that's constitutional duty. Yeah. It is enshrined in the law. So I think it will be interesting to actually properly read that story and find out how it came through with him saying, because that is ridiculous in the first instance.
Unless we'll probably say it was misquoted. Anyway, go to page 21, and we will follow up on that and find out exactly who
that is completely unacceptable.
Who this person is. Anyway, below that, some 100 Palestinians killed as Israel renews Gaza bombardment. But that's it from Daily Trust.
Nigerian Observer this morning, and it is also talking about banking today. Stakeholders back recapitalization as Tier 1 banks' capital shrinks 41% in 9 months. Well, if you're wondering what all of that means, the story is on the front page. It continues on page 4. Of course, that picture is of Nigeria's #1 delegate to COP28, speaking with the president of the UAE. Above the nameplate, Edo International Film Festival initiated to create marketplace for films and movies. Good news, ain't it? The details of that you'll find on the front page right there under the story. That's the Nigerian Observer this morning.
The Guardian newspaper next. Over 60 refinery licenses inactive 18 years after fuel import thrives. So something that needs to be focused on. Others about intention to build despite receiving licenses. So meaning to ask questions as to, okay, why is this the case? How is it going to be corrected? So that's what you see right here. Intel's waived $193 million debt to resolve pilotage crisis, MPA affirms. Questions about that as well, Intel's too, because, I mean, remember it was seized. I think there was some sort of disagreement. But after it's been reinstated to take over decisions at the ports, Atiku then says, nope, I'm not the one. You guys perhaps telling us, go find out who owns it. So when you know who owns it, has controlling shares there, you might get answers. But he says he's not the one. So whatever else, you may need to see that one there. And then, guys, Kano uncovers diversion of palliatives, vows to punish culprits. Some very, very unfortunate scenario playing out in Kano. Some officials are said to be aides, government officials, were caught repackaging palliatives. I think they were going to resell them. And this is after all the hue and cry where we talk about to see proper data from governments, state governments. What measure? What is the template that they're using to distribute these palliatives? Who is getting what? Is it sustainable? Does their list or whatever template they have, does it pass the integrity test? Because these are the same people who were in NEC who said, the previous list we don't like, it didn't pass any test. We don't have any confidence in that, as they say. And now we need to see what they've come up with, because or else it will come through or come across as though they were just given an excuse to misuse the funds. Now, if aides of government are caught to be involved in this one, you know tongues and questions will be asked and tongues wag. So, because the police were the ones who caught them, as it were. So, we'll definitely look to that and see. Teachers hold Super bus hostage, disrupt aptitude test in Dutse. So that also making the rounds as to what's going on there. That's the Guardian today.
The New Telegraph is what I have here, and they have something else. 2020-2021 jail attack break. 2,786 Oko Owerri Correctional Centers escapees still at large. That's according to an investigation. You'll find details of that on page 3. That's what they're leading with on New Telegraph. But above that, above the nameplate there, FG's personnel costs, pensions gulped 3.78 trillion naira in 9 months. Whoa. That's a huge percentage, but that's about almost over 7% of the 2024 budget. 3.78 trillion naira for personnel costs and pensions alone. Well, that's you get more details on page 3. And then see this one, uncertainty. Nigerians spend about 265.39 billion naira on life insurance. You get details of that on page 8. So you see that picture of Tony Edumelu and the DG of the World Trade Center, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, there in that COP28 conference, one of the side events there. But below that, I have U.S. Embassy under pressure as 150,000 Nigerians seek visas. Spare time for the needy. Aisha Babangida begs Nigerians. Please, who's the needy here? Who's the needy? Well, check page 3 and 5 to get more details of that. And that's it from the New Telegraph.
Look at this Nigeria newspaper this morning, and looks to me like there's a lot of business waiting to be done in the mineral industry or mineral sector in Nigeria. This Nigeria newspaper leads with this one: $700 billion mineral industry bleeding. All I see here, guys, are jobs waiting to start or to be created. Nigerians ask government to sanitize sector, dislodge illegal miners. And there's someone saying, encourage banks to give loans to investors. The details of that you'll find on page 2 of this Nigeria newspaper this morning. And of course, right beside the picture on the front page, COP28, FG refutes sponsorship of 1,411 delegates to Dubai. And then there's this concerning one. BVN NIN, sanction banks, not customer. Expert urges CBN. That story is on page 2. In case you are not aware, your bank may be shut down if you don't have a BVN or NIN, and that's perhaps the reaction you're getting to that one. Story is on page 20. Right beside the nameplate, US to invest $600 million in private investments in Africa. Find that on page 18. And the issue, this has also been cited earlier, palliative scandal rocks Kano. Governor Yusuf orders police to take over warehouse. And top government officials arrested in connection with scandal. That story is on page 4. Sincerely, guys, I honestly don't know what to make of that. I don't know what to make of that because, I don't know. That's this Nigeria newspaper this morning.
Well, definitely the government needs to make an example of that person, whoever that person is. So it's a good thing that they've directed that our has been shot, the official arrested and prosecuted where need be. So hopefully they get to that. The Abuja Inquirer, Wike terminates 85 billion naira affordable housing project, describes contract as ridiculous. To review all housing agreements. Well, we all know that housing is a thing. A huge challenge, such that the authorities have got to also be seen to be up and doing when it comes to providing housing or houses for citizens, as it were. So you might want to pick up this and see what this is about. It's supposed to be affordable housing. They said it was skewed in favor of the developer, all such narratives, but let's see that and hope that the agreements are not violated and they don't see us as one or people who do not stick to all of those. So it's right here for you to take a look at. But above this list, you also find FIRS waives penalties, interests on outstanding tax liabilities. So FIRS just waiving all of these accumulated tax or penalties, as it were. So I guess they're trying to just humanize the entire scenario, because the persons and organizations going through a lot of challenges already. So adding a lot more burden to them, maybe the thought might not just work. So
that's really humanizing the system indeed.
Well, we need to find out what's going on there. But that's the Abuja Inquirer this morning.
I have News Direct here, and they lead with that matter. Serap condemns Wike's proposal to allocate 15 billion naira for VP's residents, 2.8 billion naira for publicity. As in the 2024 budget. That's News Direct. There's Serap condemns that, and then the writers urges Senate to reject wasteful spending in supplementary budget, calls on EFCC, ICPC to investigate alleged spending of previous allocated 7 billion naira for VP's residence construction. I wonder if they're constructing the VP's residence every new government is a. But about the nameplate, FIRS grants waiver, that story that was on the Abuja Inquirer. And then we'll come back down. Oil, gas executives to showcase local content contributions at 17th Practical Nigeria Content Forum in Nagoa. And that's it from the News Direct here.
Business Day newspaper today has some interesting stories on its front page. Let's begin with the lead story. It is also talking about Nigeria's delegation to COP28. Tinubu's outsized, COP28 delegation costs 880 million naira to fly. Look at the writers. Many on delegation are idols, according to Peter Obi. Presidency defends large delegation. I'm not sure defend is the word, but hey, the details you'll find on the front page. It continues on the inside pages. Right beside that lead story, El-Rufai plans $100 million venture capital in private sector return. That's you find that story continue on page 31. Even the lead to the inside story is quite telling. Above the nameplate, the big story says how celebrities fuel Nigeria's gambling epidemic. What does that mean? The details you'll find on the front page. It continues on page 2 of Business Day newspaper this morning. Well, that's Business Day today, and a look at some of the dailies. We're back right after now to take on the issues as they come. Just stay with us.
Few hours after President Bola Tinubu presented his first budget estimates to the National Assembly, the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning gives a breakdown of the proposals. The Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, Mr. Wale Adum, give more insights on the assumptions in the budget and explains why the federal government wants to reduce borrowing.
Of travel is that in order to stabilize the Nigerian economy for rapid inclusive growth, there is going to be less reliance on borrowing. The budget deficit is being brought down from about over 6%, 6.1% of GDP to 3.88% of GDP. That's a huge change in direction from unlimited and limitless borrowing to focusing on revenue, and as we heard earlier from Mr. President, focusing on expenditure management to give value for money with expenditure and to raise revenue. And we heard that the key target is to increase tax to GDP, the proportion of tax to GDP from roughly under 10% now to 18% by the time of, in a couple of years' time.
The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Mr. Atiku Bagudu, presents the sectoral breakdown of the budget. According to the Minister, defense and security, education, health, infrastructure and social development and poverty reduction are the top 5 allocations. The debt servicing is expected to go up 9.18 trillion naira. The minister explains that the budget is designed to address fiscal challenges and improve domestic economic situations.
The budget that was presented today to the National Assembly, and I believe was well received by the National Assembly and Nigerians, has been prepared against the backdrop of continuing global and domestic challenges. Overall fiscal risks have increased following weaker than expected domestic economy performance and structural issues in the domestic economy.
A review of the 2023 budget reveals that only 25% of the capital budget has been released as of September 2023. Mr. Ben Akabweze gives further insight into the plans of the new administration.
This is a transition year. We're transiting from one president to another. The last time we had a transition year like that was 2015. In 2015, the budget was not presented until actually mid-December. So 1 month later than we are doing even now. So it is normal to expect a new administration to settle down, get a handle around things, and ensure that, because the budget is not just a mere statement of revenues and expenses. The budget really is arguably the government's most important policy statement every year. It's also worthy of note that the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration has already, in quick succession, presented 2 supplementary budgets for 2023 to quickly address, exigent measures. So clearly, the administration has been hard at work to address, fiscal, issues.
The administration is hoping that the budget will meet the expectations of Nigerians and improve the nation's gross domestic product. Benny Ark, Channels Television News.
All right, so those two gentlemen are joining us this morning to weigh in on some of the matters that are raising concerns of people asking questions about the budget. So, Seun Nigbude, co-founder and director of Budget, joins us virtually. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Pleasure, Chamberlain. Good morning. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're good here. So, the budget, yearly ritual. I know several people have thought or have said, look, if they don't break it down, if it doesn't mean something to the man out there on the street in terms of the actuals, the cost of services and products, it's just going to be that ritual, and then they'll see it as us and them. But last time we were trying to find out these line items in the budget that leads to the ultimate figure, which everyone keeps talking about, How did we arrive at all of this? There are questions about all of this. I mean, especially last time when the president did ask the assembly to approve some 2.17 trillion, thereabouts, for the supplementary budget, and then some of the line items, there were questions about it, which budgets also raised to the SGF. So give us an update now, what your impression is about how we've arrived at this budget.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's like the Budget Office DG said, they had a transition budget in 2015. We were even thinking they were going to do environment. And environment is different from a supplementary budget. Environment, you reorder an existing budget. So if I was going to spend an item on something, I'm going to change it and say I'm spending it on something else. But an entire supplementary budget was produced. And in the production of that budget, which we felt was highly unnecessary, a whole lot of things in that budget could have waited till January for execution. We found out that so many items were padded in, operational vehicles for the First Lady. There were things around rebuilding or rehabilitation of buildings in Lagos, maybe the Dam Barracks, the Vice President House. Things were highly unnecessary in the context of the challenges that Nigerians face. And there was this infamous presidential yacht that was supposed to be bought. So all of that we brought together, and we solicited feedback from citizens and said, we have to push back heavily on this. Unfortunately, the National Assembly rushed to pass the budget without a whole lot of informed debates. And next thing, the SGF, when we tailored that letter to the SGF, he mentioned that the president had assented to the budget. There was nothing they could do at that point. And I think it's a sore point for the Tinubu administration, because it means that they are standing on a very strong wrong note. There's a huge consensus on generating increased revenue, and I think that's valid. Nigeria's revenue is very poor based on the standards, if you even put it behind the GDP. But it's not just about generating more money, it's about spending what you have efficiently also. There's a problem with spending efficiency in Nigeria, and I think that's even evidenced by the huge delegate, the government delegate that went to the current COP28 in Dubai. And I think that same mentality that looks like we're not running out of money, there's too much money to share around, that's the same thing that we have seen in the supplementary budget. And I bet we'll likely see in the current 2024 proposed budget. Unfortunately, it's been over 96 hours now that the president presented the budget. There is no line-by-line breakdown of the budget, and that's very unusual. Something budget wants to take up in the next few days, asking the Budget Office. It is highly unusual that, as at this time of the year, we don't have a proposed budget on its website, and it means maybe we should be worried, or it speaks to something fishy. But some basic sectoral details are available, but those are broad summaries that do not communicate enough. We need the line-by-line items so that Nigerians can combat it, Nigerians can provide feedback to their elected legislators, and so that also changes how the budget would finally come out at the end of the day.
That is incredibly important, especially at this point in time where we're told to tighten our belts, we don't have money or funds in the country, we need to do things a little differently. So they need to, as soon as yesterday, as a matter of fact, put up those line items so people can indeed see that government is at least leading from the front when it comes to ensuring that we're just not frivolous with funds. But speaking about that letter, which you highlighted about some of these items, budget had requested for the removal of frivolous items in the 2023 supplementary budget. So you had written to the office of the SGF, and in their reply, they did tell you that the president had already assented to the 2023 supplementary appropriation, and as such, nothing. It's been overtaken by events. So you did say in passing earlier that they rushed some of these things. So you think that it was somewhat deliberate to allow this kind of scenario to play out by everyone who is involved in this? How did budget take it?
I think so. I think it's the recent approach of the current National Assembly. Let's not forget that this is also the same issue with the INEC resident electoral commissioners, where several stakeholders, including the civil society, complained that certain characters had some partisan affiliation. And before even civil society even expected that there will be committee hearings. I mean, the same way that it was done when we had the Loretta issue years ago. And there were no committee conversations, there were no reviews, there were no presentation that was publicly heard. Next thing we heard that National Assembly has rushed to confirm them. And I think this, and I'm even seeing news today that National Assembly is trying to make sure that the budget is passed before December 31st, 2023. I mean, that's not how to do an oversight. That's not how to be an institution that is respected by Nigeria and starts with accountability. I mean, and that's why the National Assembly should own up, should understand its own role in the democracy. It's the major pillar that distinguishes democracy from every form of any system of government. So if the National Assembly chooses not to be independent, but we're not talking about the fact that they should be adversarial, we're asking you just be independent, let your voice be strong, out of, and they believe that will develop Nigeria in the long run. Let's not forget that the budget is the law. So when the National Assembly passes an item into the law, the executive can expand on that basis. So I think the National Assembly, the way they've moved in recent times, they do not understand how critical their role is. And I would advise them not to rush the 2024 budget because this is the first budget that will set the tone for the Tinubu administration. There's enough scrutiny that must be on it to be sure that, one, there's congruence with the manifesto that was produced by the party. Secondly, they must ensure that those line items are also in context of the recent tribulations or trials that Nigerians are facing. You know, are there enough palliatives? Is there enough support for small businesses? Are there enough funding for infrastructure and things that could employ Nigerians at scale? So those are the level of debates that the budget should be done at. The problem with us is that we have a budget that is close to spending than planning. So we just want to spend. And this is the time for us to do something different. At the beginning of the Tinubu administration, sometime in September, Budget published a short paper about the 10 things that the Tinubu administration must do differently if he wants a successful budget, if he wants the budget to translate to developmental objectives. And we published that. And we want to see the light items. We want to see the National Assembly cooperate with us to ensure that we don't just do budget as rituals, but something that actually delivers meaningful impact for the public. I mean, President Muhammadu Buhari spent so much trillions of naira, you know, through the budget process. And at the end of the day, the jury is out there. It doesn't mean that he achieved significant efforts in health. He didn't achieve in education. Infrastructure is still not where it's supposed to be. The insecurity was in a bad place. So it's very important that the Tinubu administration should focus that this is our instrument for planning. This is not just a contract vending machine. And I think if that is the mentality they carry to the budget, it will work. And the president also mentioned transparency, accountability, and value for money. We just don't want that to just be nice to have or a nice line item in the budget speech. The president should bring up forward ideas and ask for civil society and international development partners to give it ideas on how the budget can actually provide value for money and actually can be accountable and transparent to Nigeria. So we don't have enough. We want to go back to the fundamentals. We want to do things differently. All of that will require a whole lot of fiscal discipline. But what we are seeing so far with COP, with hunger, with the way the supplementary budget was passed, with the way cars were bought for National Assembly, what we're yet to see with 2024 budget, I don't see that fiscal discipline yet. And that can really be the biggest problem with the Tinubu administration.
And if there appears to be a pattern, there certainly will be questions as to the kind of democracy we have here if there's abuse of process, which is certainly not what anyone wants to see. So, but what did you make of the response of, I think it was Senator Ndume, talking about the 1.5 billion naira on vehicle for the office of the First Lady amidst all of these challenges we have, where I think he was talking about the fact that, well, she didn't request for it, she may return it. So it comes across as though they're trying to tie it to persons. It's about offices, if we recollect here. what is allocated to those offices so that they are seen to be prudent? I thought that was what it's supposed to be about.
Yeah, at the end of the day, an institution, they say, is a lending shadow of an individual. So, I mean, when you say you are tired, and it's not just about that, because, it's about the culture of your government. And people must look at your government and ask, what exactly are you trying to do? Are you a frugal government? Are you a government that is a free-for-all government? They must be able to deduct your culture. And they must be able to see, and it's by looking at your budget and how you prioritize either the people or yourself. I mean, that people now decide what approach they take. So they did now go another round of contract racketeering, contract inflation, so on the delivery of public projects. I mean, we have a project tracking report in Tracker. You could read it. There's so many projects that are delivered in the country that do not last beyond 2 years. Around 70% of, especially of micro projects that we do solar power systems, we build rural roads, we do different things. They don't last because the contractors that deliver those projects, they barely have a brand name anywhere. They hardly have any online publication or documentation anywhere. And they go to the procurement process. They tick all the boxes. At the end of the day, they get a contract and they are in the same bucket with the civil servant, and they deliver the most suboptimal project that you can think of without any level of evaluation. So if you're actually looking for results, there's a way to do these things differently. And that's why I said the culture of the Tinubu government will be critical. If Nigerians are seeing from afar that 1, 2, 3, 4 incidences are happening, and it's just about a few people benefiting themselves against the public, then that's how they will perceive you in the end. The reality is that this is the most difficult period for Nigerians, at least in the last 3 decades. And the government needs to be very sensitive, needs to be very, very aware about all of this, and should be sure that they are not creating, they're not further expanding the gap between the citizens and the government. We're not creating a 2-tier society where people at the helm of affairs of government act as if the country cannot run out of money, and where the people who are at the lower rung of the ladder continue to bear the pain in a excruciating manner. So I feel there's a bit of sensitivity that has to happen at this point. I don't see it yet. When we see the detailed budget, maybe we can have much more informed opinion about it. But like these incidents I've mentioned with either National Assembly purchases of the supplementary budget, or even what the Minister of FCT wants to do. I mean, the primary schools that are bad in FCT, the health centers are not. Go to Gwagwalada Central Hospital. This is now in the best position. Why don't you spend 15 billion on the Central Hospital in Gwagwalada?
If I may come in here, it appears that what our governments have been doing so far is what some will call a question of revenue mobilization, revenue allocation, borrowing and lending, as against proper implementation of a budget that is people-oriented. But again, you hear the rhetorics, we are looking at how to serve Nigerians better. So how would this budget proposal, for instance, is there any likelihood that there will be some kind of improvement in the area of implementation of what it seems has been proposed already?
I think we will have to wait till then. And I think because they would have to squeeze water from a stone to get the kind of revenues that they have proposed. 18 trillion naira is a budget revenue target. Based on the figures for 2022 or 2023, the federal government might eat up to 10 trillion naira in its revenue, which sounds good, but some of those revenue items are also padded. We are counting grants as revenue. By recounting, we're double counting, in my own view, government-owned enterprises as part of revenue, which things I think is just the operating surplus that should have just been added. But if you put it in a proper way, maybe the revenues are not up to 7 trillion naira, but you are putting 18 trillion naira as revenue. I mean, that for me is not where we should be specifically. We should look at the we should ask ourselves, it's not just about revenue mobilization. And so I'm not too hopeful. We would have to wait on the president and his team, because he mentioned in his speech that they want to pay attention to transparency, accountability, and value for money. Now, how do they want to operationalize that is what we want to see. But all of that starts from here. If the foundation is wrong, by passing the wrong budget, you cannot expect some miraculous outcome at the end of the day.
You know, you said something earlier about the government appearing to be more focused on spending rather than planning. Isn't the budget document supposed to be a planning document? And at the end of the day, how much can we say is spent on each Nigerian if it is not properly put together?
I made that point because that's the incidence of what we have seen so far. You know, we write a national development plan and we don't follow it. We don't say, okay, we have a plan to 2030, we have a plan to 2050. What exactly, this is how our budget fits into national development plan. We don't see that. We say, oh, we want to spend this amount of money on education. To what outcome are we spending this amount of money on education? Unfortunately, within the president's speech, he did not give the sectoral breakdown in his speech. The minister did that. But he spoke broadly about the fact that they want to focus on child development and elementary education, which is good, but we want to see that in the budget. You know, you have to be able to show that your planning document, your thesis as a country is being funded. It's not just because Tinubu is there today and he executes whatever he likes. In those ways, we just keep running on short-termism. So we run in 4-year cycles. And that's why Nigeria is not developing as it should be. Because everybody comes with an agenda and says, oh, it's your win, and cancels your win. And somebody starts and calls it empower and cancels empower. Somebody comes back and says, my own is the yellow jar funds, and starts another. I mean, nobody is able to tailor to say, this is our strategic vision as a country. So we are in that pipeline, irrespective of which government comes. But it looks like anybody must call itself some form of, nomenclature, renewed hope funding or something like that. Something has to change, that our entities have to be grounded on planning if we want to make the budget a meaningful document to Nigeria. So that everybody is clear. If we want to say we want to grow non-oil exports, our budget should show it. If we want to transform out-of-pocket expenses and bring more Nigeria to the health insurance framework, our budget should show it. If we're going to spend more money on the PhD system, our budget should show it. If we're going to put more students out of school and take them to the class, our budget should show it. So then our budget, let it read like a planning document. Because by the time you look into that budget, you just see research and planning, administrative capital items, and you're asking yourself, how much would this change the need? What exactly is going to make a difference? And it's about the president putting his feet down and says, don't just write whatever you think at the MDA level into the budget. This is my agenda. This is my plan. And everything you're going to bring into the budget must fit into this agenda, must fit into this plan. That, I think, that's how you write the budget process. That's how you change the society in the long run, not running on these short pulses.
There are those who would say there is the politics of the budget, and then there is the activity or the functionality of that budget. Let's have a conversation around some of those with Mr. Wale Smatoyunide, who is DG Nigeria Employers Consultative Association. Nenka, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Well, you have been quoted as saying that while there are some sectors of the Nigerian economy that are critical, one budget cycle cannot really address all of the challenges.
Absolutely.
Be that as it may, speak to one of the things that Mr. Nigbide just raised now, that if only we could have some form of sustainability in our developmental agenda, some vision that, okay, for education over the next 20 years, this is what's going to be doing, so that no matter what government comes in, that is what would happen. Do you see that happening anytime soon?
Well, good morning once again. I think Sheung basically laid the foundation for the conversation that I really wanted to have with you. And the points he made, they are quite succinct and they are quite fundamental to to whatever we want to achieve as a country. It's less of what you want to do as an individual, because what has happened over time, even within the context of national development plans. If you check the whole national development plans that we've had, hardly can you point to one of those development plans that at the expiration of, at the terminal date of that development plan, that we did a proper evaluation to see, have we really achieved this national development plan, which spoke to the issue of the short-termism. A government comes in, come up with their own agenda, they run with that agenda, another government comes in, they will start another kind of agenda. So it's more of focusing on what the individual or the individual administration want to do rather than what a government can actually do. We're open, we can't stop open, because worst case scenario, we have 8 years of the New Hope agenda. Probably somebody else will come in 7 years' time or 8 years' time and come up with another kind of agenda, and that is one of the roots of the problem we have. With the nature of our economy, the nature of our developmental state, you need a sustained growth pattern, a sustained trajectory beyond 4 years, beyond 8 years, beyond 12 years. You need a sustained growth pattern, which every sector will grow on. You spend 1 billion on education this year, you spend another 1 billion next year. You have to maintain that traction for you to have that foundation. We don't have now.
One of the issues that has also been raised, picking from what you just said now about not being able to track our national development plans, is that of even the budgets. Do you think over the years, let's stick with just this Fourth Republic, that over the years we've been able to track the performance of our budgets, to say, okay, this budget performed creditably well, so then let us increase whatever it is that we need to do?
The tracking at the government level might be suspect, but we have with organizations like Budget and also instrumentalities of the private sector, we're able to come up with certain parameters to check. And sometimes you also realize when you come up with your own parameters, you come up with your assessment, you do your own independent assessment, they're always met with some kind of resistance from those in government or either the ministries or the agency, because sometimes it doesn't align with the parameters or the assessment that they have done, which is okay. So for us, I think it's the root of the matter, and we've advocated over time that you don't just draw up a budget or you don't draw up a policy. If you draw up a policy that will affect critical stakeholders, then it is imperative that you involve those stakeholders at the process of formulation, at the process of implementation, and also at the process of evaluation of that policy, whether they are working or not. If you screen out stakeholders, those that the policy will affect, either Nigerians, other institutions, if you take them out of the context of the formulation, you take them out of the context of implementation, then your whole process is suspect, because there's no independent body that can do evaluation to know whether that policy has worked or not.
Another challenge in that regard is that, according to the DG of the Budget Office, we have more than 1,500 ministries, departments, and agencies of the federal government alone. And those will come with one budget or the other. So when we talk about these critical, sectors, education, health, and all those things, these are the nuts and bolts in the engine of government that's going to get all of these done. But let's speak to the critical sectors. You talked about the fact that we cannot stop hoping. That gladly also, perhaps, the president says that this is the renewed hope, budget of renewed hope. Yeah. Looking at the budget lines, how hopeful are you that even if this one budget cycle doesn't move the needle much, at least it is in the way of achieving that? How hopeful are you?
Before I take your question, the issue of I'll call the proliferation of ministries, agencies, and departments. I think there is this Orosori report that streamlines agencies, that try to reduce duplication. And that report was submitted, was submitted with a lot of fanfare, and the expectation was that the report would be implemented. But Up till today, there has not been full implementation of that report. We don't even know if it's still where it's supposed to be. Now, coming back to the budget items, and she also mentioned it succinctly. If the fundamentals are wrong, then there is hardly any hope for you to achieve the plan that you have. And consistently, we've said you cannot continue to feed the cause and keep complaining about the effect. If your pattern has been wrong over time and you've not achieved the kind of growth that you anticipate, then it's expected that you take a critical look at those patterns and those allocations to see, this has not worked for me over time. It is time for me to do things differently. Now, looking at the budget currently, while we've not seen the whole details of the lines, but looking at it holistically as it is, it calls for a lot of concern. While the minister was sharing his perspective about the budget, he raised certain critical issues at the beginning. He called them introduction, and he said there are issues with domestic revenue mobilization, public debt sustainability, elevated inflation, challenging domestic business environment, infrastructure, forex, and many other things. Now, the expectation is that the budget, being a planning document, will, to some extent, address those issues that you've identified as very critical. Now, the question is the budget we've seen, both the supplementary that was earlier passed and the budget, the whole budget as we see it, are they speaking to these critical issues? The president mentioned the issue of transparency, accountability, fiscal responsibility. With the track of expenditure line that we've seen, the 1.2 billion that you mentioned, the 15 billion for the VP's house. So many of those expenditure lines, the humongous amount budgeted for, approved for the cars of the senators, of those of NAS, does that speak to fiscal discipline? Within the context of the realities of what an average Nigerian is facing and what the organized businesses are currently facing. If they are not speaking to it, I think it's time for government to look back at those expenditure lines and let us take a very deep look or have a very deep conversation concerning the issue of fiscal discipline. If you take out fiscal discipline from the context of what you have provided, then we'll keep running in circles.
The question then will be, who should be taking these on? One of the things that have always bugged my mind is why, approve another budget when we haven't quite taken stock of the previous one. We'll take that and a number of other issues on when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Well, we're still talking about some of the issues being raised concerning the budget that the president presented to the National Assembly. Well, Mr. Smatoyinri, so here we are looking at some of the critical sectors, education, health, and all of that. The defense takes prominence. There are those who have said that the reason for insecurity is unemployment and poverty. So we seem to be, from what we have of the budget, we seem to be focusing on solving a problem that is still existing. There are those who think maybe we should have paid a lot more attention to capital infrastructure and a number of other things that will encourage the private sector to produce, to be more productive, to create an employment and all those things, as opposed to fighting a problem that is still there where we don't seem to be doing enough to solve the problem. What do you think of that?
Well, it still comes back to the issue of feeding the cause and complaining about the effect. As you said, rightly so, if you take unemployment out of the context and you have majority of your citizens gainfully employed, then you have invariably resolved a lot of economic issues, including unemployment. You have resolved a lot of issues, even that the nation itself we have. Because once you keep the wheel of production and consumption going, you have put yourself in the path of growth. Security, defense having a large chunk of the budget is just dealing with the issue from the effect context. Let's do more with education. Let government focus more on issues concerning infrastructure. Let's focus on empowering the private sector. Look, nobody is interested in palliatives. An average Nigerian, talking about palliatives every other time is sometimes can be quite vexatious. Rather than talking about palliative, rather than talking about grants, why not let's focus on those items that will enable the private sector to operate without much hindrance? Why not let's focus on the regulatory, the legislative environment that will enable organized businesses not only to expand, not only to thrive, but to create jobs. The moment you focus on creating jobs, then you have resolved to a large extent the issue of unemployment. We are not really at war, and we are not anticipating war. So rather than deal with continue to pump such enormous money into those areas that are not our priorities, why not let's focus on what exactly are our priorities within the context of the next 3-4 years? And we think our priorities should be deepening infrastructure development, focusing on the issue of health. We lost the opportunity during COVID. If you remember, billions and billions and billions came into this country, either through grants, whether through support, whether through private sector contribution, to upscale our health facility. But we lost that opportunity, and now we're back to ground zero. And then focus on the issue of education. If we deal with those critical issues, then we have put ourselves back on the trajectory of growth.
How significantly do you think these budgets can start us off on that journey? You said one budget cycle cannot address these critical sectors, and a number of people will agree with you. But how significantly do you think this budget is addressing or has taken the bull by the horn in laying a path for economic growth?
It hasn't really done much. What we urge government to do is to listen to critical stakeholders that are making submissions, that are asking questions. You should take those feedbacks as constructive feedbacks to enrich the budget before the National Assembly passes it. Let's go back to the items, the line items. Which of these line items should not be a priority for us as a nation?
Which of them are vexatious for you?
We've spoken about the issue of, without belaboring it, the 1.2 billion is actually in the supplementary budget, which also feeds into all this context. But without mentioning vexatious issues, but priority for us, let me go to the priorities, is infrastructure. We need to enable the private sector through critical infrastructures. Power sector needs a lot of support. We need to focus on private sector support within the context of power. We need to focus on education, because for the private sector, is the outcome of the educational sector that feeds into the private sector within the context of skills and manpower. So we need to focus on education, we need to focus on health, and we need to focus on critical infrastructure. For the private sector, those are key issues. And those items that we've seen, that we are brandishing around, the 15 billion for renovation, the renovation of the dam, those items can be plugged back into these critical issues, so that we can put ourselves back in that position where we say we have laid a foundation, a true foundation for our growth in the next 4 years.
Every time we talk about budgets, we talk about the federal government. But states also present budgets to their state houses of assembly. While a lot of attention is on the federal government, the presidency, from doing the right things and all, we seem to give less attention to states, where the real work of development happens, where the Nigerians actually live. How significant is that for you? What do you think? And then perhaps also speak in the same vein of collaboration between federal government and states, so that the dividends of democracy, as we call them, can actually get down to the grassroots.
Someone said Nigeria is a big conspiracy. when it's convenient, we talk of federalism, that okay, the states should do their thing or the regions should do their things. When it's not convenient or when it's not serving our purpose, we say, look, it's federal government. And also, if you look at the line items for some of the state government's budget, you realize the humongous amount budgeted for governance, for state house management, and those are quite big issues we've raised. And also, if you just oppose the debt, the quantum of debt that the states are owing with the federal government, they're probably contesting. So it's also a big issue for the state, and I think it's time for citizens, basically, citizens and critical stakeholders in those states and also in the local governments to take a different approach to asking questions. I think Nigerians should also take a different approach to being much more assertive within the context of governance. If not, the state governments, the local governments will keep they will continue to get away with murder within the context of the kind of expenditure expenditure aids that they incur, the way they spend their money. I think fiscal discipline can also be said to be worse at the state level because attention is not given to that group, to the state levels, and we are all focusing on the issue of the federal government. So rightly said, a lot of things are happening in the states that if you open it up, you might just find out that the rot in the federal government might just be a child's play.
In that same context, perhaps lastly, let me ask you, so how should the citizens, indigents, residents of those states take this charge up on their own to call their state governments particularly to account? How do you suppose that they could go around about that, and how significant would that be in ensuring that money is actually well spent?
Now, we will advocate more citizen education, and the civil societies can play a big role in this. We will not advocate for mass protests. We are not an advocate of mass protests. We are not an advocate of mass demonstration, but citizens, each senatorial district have a senator. There are House of Rep members in each state. Now, what are we doing as citizens to engage those that we have sent to Abuja or to engage those that we have sent to the capital to represent us? That is the point where the engagement needs to start. If my House of Rep member in my local government, if it was part of those that sat and approved 100 billion to buy cars for members, I should be able to go to the constituency office and ask questions. But the moment we keep quiet and assume it doesn't matter, or the moment I am part of those that are benefiting from the rot in the system, then I'm already compromised. And that's how we say the whole system seems like a big conspiracy where everybody's hands has been dipped, whether rightly or wrongly, in the cookie jar, and your capacity to actually advocate or your capacity to actually raise fundamental questions is compromised. So it goes back to citizens' education. Everybody must start asking questions, constructive questions, not questions not emotional questions as well, but constructive questions that eat to the heart of our development. Until we start doing that, and until Nigerians also start taking that critical step of asking these fundamental questions, then we'll probably not move forward.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much this morning for being a part of our conversation. It's been I don't know, I guess it's just saying to us that there's a lot more to be done. Absolutely. That we have even started. Wale Smatoyorinde, DG Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, NECA, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for always having us here.
We've also had Olusegun Onigbede, co-founder and director, Budget. He joined us virtually. Thank you so much. We're back right after now to take on another issue. Dealt with it before. Let's do it again. We'll be right back.
All right, welcome back. We're turning our attention now to that matter about the Conference of Parties 28, the reactions coming through. We've got Dr. Yunus Atanko, who is the chief spokesperson for Labour Party's Presidential Campaign Council. He joins us virtually from Kaduna. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today.
Good morning, Chamlin. Good morning, Nigerians.
Okay, so let's go over this. I mean, this Conference of Parties 28 in Dubai, the list of delegates for different countries, you know. So looking at that chart, which got us to where we are here today. So how many delegates each country brought came under scrutiny. And so you look at that of Nigeria, where we had 1,411 delegates. So you can look at that chart, you see UAE, Brazil, China, Nigeria, Indonesia, and it goes on like that. So that graph just shows you where Nigeria fell in. So you could see the list of our delegates, the Conference of Parties, the parties themselves, and then you also see that of the overflow. I think that should come up now, guys. And so you look at all of that, which is how this question now came through. But it was based on this that your principal, Mr. Peter Obi, then went ahead and tweeted that in a twist of sad irony, let me congratulate the giant of Africa, Nigeria, for matching the great China with the same number of contingents at the ongoing COP28 in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Nigeria's contingents to COP28 totaled 1,411, the same number as the Chinese contingents, while China's budget for 2024 is about $4 trillion, about $2,280 per head. Nigeria's budget is about $33 billion, about $165 per head. China has a high Human Development Index with a ranking of 79 out of 191 countries, and Nigeria has a low HDI with a ranking of 161 out of 191 countries measured. And then he goes on to say, most importantly, the vast majority of those in the Nigerian delegation to COP28 are either non-relevant civil servants or relations, friends, and hangers-on of high government officials. Most of them hardly understand or have anything to do with climate change. So that then, of course, raises a lot more questions, because there's been some response to coming through from the authorities, which we'll go to soon. But would you go ahead and tell us, how did he arrive at the conclusion that most of those who are there are not relevant? I mean, this suggests that he thinks that they're all sponsored by government.
Well, the question you want to ask is that, was there any communication by the government to the people of Nigeria that we are going with X amount of numbers? If, for example, the target is for us to ensure that we are trying to increase the per capita income of Nigerians, we could have said that, okay, we are going with the Ministry of Mining, or we are going with the Ministry of Petroleum, and we are going with the minister or with a technical member who can be able to convince certain number of international community in trying to bring in more income to the country. None of it was done. Everything was kept in a strud, and the only thing we see, bam, we saw the numbers of 1,411 persons going to Dubai. What I would call, come, let us go and chop and relax. Because rather than you come, let us go and make money for Nigeria, there was no communication. So you could find it very difficult to understand exactly how did they come about that particular number. What are they going there to do? And who are they meeting? If it's a delegate of party, if this particular ministry or Ministry of Budget and Planning is thinking about how to work with certain particular group of people, or you talk about Ministry of Mines and Power, now you are meeting maybe a Chinese industry or Chinese ministry to think about how we can improve the power sector in the country. These are some of the plans that ought to have been done, and letting the people know the quality of people that are going with Mr. President and what are the costs, because we are running a country where we have a proposed budget of 27 trillion naira. we have a deficit in that particular budget of 9 trillion naira. We have in that budget a recurrent expenditure of 9 trillion naira. We have a capital budget of that particular of this country within 8 trillion naira. And then at the same time, we have a service debt of 8 trillion naira, meaning that the deficit in the budget is more than even the capital expenditure.
Okay.
And it's even...
Dr. Tanko, pardon me to jump in. I mean, I hear you. So if you say that all of those details were not put out before the Nigeria went out there, I hope you can hear me though. So yes, how did Mr. Peter Obi arrive at this conclusion? And yourself too saying it appears this is just for them to come and chop. What did you rely on to come to that conclusion?
No, because that was chopped out, it's very clear. Nobody, even you are not abreast or probably aware of that particular number until when the number comes out. So definitely you will work with the numbers that were shown vis-a-vis the non-information that the government gave out. So even myself, I do not even know the numbers until when I saw it in the papers yesterday night.
So the thing is this, I mean, in terms of what we are aware of, what we're not aware of, I haven't told you what we're aware of as of yet, but the explanation that came through from government is that contrary to what, including yourself and Mr. B have said, that the assumption that all of them were sponsored by government, they say no, that is not the case. That the list of those who were sponsored by government was minimal. In fact, they went ahead to explain that it's conference of parties, interested parties. They could be civil society, it could be NGOs, it could be state governments, different people, but the federal government didn't sponsor all of that 1,411.
They should give us what they sponsored. You see, in a country where planning and communication is topmost notch, the government will tell you, we are going with X amount of number of people. And this particular amount of people may cost us so extra amount of money because we are trying to build trust here with the people. This money does not belong to an individual. It's a taxpayer's money. And so it must be accounted for. Just like my principal used to say, Peter Obi said that, look, any money that is in the government coffers belong to the people and it must be accounted for the people. So when you...
Yeah, because I'm just looking at, when your principal says the vast majority of those there are non-relevant, they're civil servants or relations and friends and hangers-on of high government officials, most of them hardly understand anything. So this presupposes that he's seen the breakdown of the list, who was where. And he might have also seen that those who registered were all physically present. Is it because some are saying, look, yes, some people registered, some were not. But comparing the statement of your principal and that of the PDP, because PDP says, look, they want the roll call and the cost incurred by federal government and these delegates. They want to see it because I think from their statement, they haven't seen it, so they couldn't come to any conclusion. But since your principal came to a conclusion, it presupposes that he's seen all of that. Has he seen it?
Look, we have a track record of wasteful spending. This is not the first time Peter Gregory Obi is making statements as regard to wasteful spending. Remember, there was a meeting that happened in the United States, and that particular same trend was established. So that gives him a kind of a leeway to knowing that this is a trend that is continuous. So those statements come out of the trend of the continuous way in which Nigerian government, especially this particular government, spends money without really looking at the income of what is being generated for you to spend as against the people. So it's an established trend. So even if they give you details of it, that will have helped to even give you a fact of the matter. As we speak now, these are trends that Peter Obi and many Nigerians rely on.
That's to say that no matter what the maybe Ministry of Information says much later, or even if they publish what the PDP is asking them to publish, it doesn't matter. Your principal has made up his mind that the trend continues.
Don't forget, we're in a digital world. Nothing is hidden in this sky. The number of people travel can be easily accessed from the airline industry, even though there's confidentiality, but they could easily be accessed. Where they stayed, in the hotel where they stayed, the amount of money that was used for this, it can easily be accessed by you and I. Within a short period of time, you just get the information. So it is still easy. Whether the Ministry of Information does that or it doesn't do that, Nigerians are sure to monitor every kobo that belongs to them and how it is spent. It can be done.
Okay, so
we are only asking the record, and even now, as I mentioned it, it's just to put a stamp to the authority because we want a certified true copy. Even that word now, anyway, is now a questionable word in our courts. But then you will have it as a record to show that there is information saying that the federal X amount of money on this particular project or particular.
If you're asking for
to the copy,
true copy, that means that you haven't seen it. You haven't seen the document, the list.
No.
Oh, because I was wondering. That's what I was asking.
Of the expenditure.
What did your principal rely on to make this comment? Because this comment, many are taking it to the bank, saying this comment is true. But if you're now saying that, well, you haven't seen it, you want a copy. So you made a statement without seeing the list. Like I said,
every Nigerian can access each of the number of persons that traveled. Our principal, very possible information must have been given to him as regard to those who travel, how they travel. Just like I told you, it's a jet age now. It's easily accessible. Even in the airline industry, it's very, very easily accessible. But for him to make those particulars, and for your own questions, now, asking for data or certified true copy from the government is just put to pay what our principal have said. It's not rocket science, it's not hidden. But then, if they didn't come from them, we'll keep on accusing them of mismanaging and misappropriation our resources. They have to come clean.
So, Mr. Yunusa, this conversation's one that we all know that is very sensitive to Nigerians, and they want to get things really clear. So let's look at things here. COP28 is usually a gathering of different parties for different occasions. Even the presidency has already said that they only sponsored about 100 people. And the whole delegation of Nigerians, I mean, even if you go to, let's say, for instance, you go to the carbonbrief.org, you see that there are IGO observers, international governmental organization observers, there's non-governmental organization observers that are all there. There are different events happening on the fringes, and different organizations that are interested in global partners or global investors or foreign direct investments can go to these conferences and seek for investors to join them. And guess what? They will be bearing the Nigerian flag. How is that a problem?
Okay, let me explain to you. I am no stranger to COP gathering. I was in COP program in Doha. You can Google it and you will see. And I even granted that interview. I was not sponsored by the government. There are various NGOs, particular NGOs have opportunities of getting international funding who sponsor their trip. That one is fact. But then what we are saying is that the delegate number of Nigerians sponsored by the government should have been made public for us to know. If the government is saying that they didn't sponsor all of the 1,411 delegates, let them give us the delegate number in which the government sponsored. Okay, we saw it, even if I'm not mistaken.
Let's just clear this here. When you went to Doha, you mentioned you went to Doha. Were you grouped under the Nigerian delegation, even though you were not sponsored by government?
I was not grouped under government delegation. I was
I said Nigerian.
The NGO.
Were you grouped under the Nigerian delegation?
Hello?
Yes?
Come again?
When you went to Doha, were you recorded as being under the Nigerian delegation? I didn't say government or non-government. Nigerian delegation.
No, you will not be grouped under Nigerian delegation. There are group A class, B class, C class, where you belong to. We belong to, I went under the civil society groups. And already it was clear you have a civil security, they can give you a breakdown of those who come under the government coffers, and there are those who come under NGOs. There are those who come under the business sector who want to do business different from even government, private business sector. It's very clear. But we are talking about the government delegates in particular. Now, this is very clear, specific.
Okay, Mr. Yunusa, if we can just get that graphics up there. The charts we have from COP28 delegates shows two groups of people. There are those who are called the party, and the other group is called the overflow. When you were there, were you in the party or the overflow?
No, like I told you, I don't know what the category looks like now, but maybe that may be categorized under overflow, considering the fact that we are under the civil society groups, okay? Maybe, and then the particular new grouping that they have may indicate these are actually recognized government officials. And that is the reason why we are asking for clarity. Now, you asking me right now, I am not a government official. I can only go ahead to go and look for information as regard to who and who travel under the government payroll. So if the government want to come clean, this is a lesson for them. Already the people have accused the government of wasteful spending. Okay. Earlier on, United States for a meeting and all of that. So they should have been more careful as regard to when they are going to Dubai. But anyway, the problem is that the government itself does not really care what the people feel. They hold them in high pain and distrust. And these are some of the lies that is in the system, which Nigerians are demanding for accountability.
As a matter of fact, yes, Mr. Tanko, because we want to be sure that the statement that government has put out there, they're not lying to Nigerians. So when we're asking for documents that you have, and compared to the ones out there and some of the ones we have, we want to be sure that, look, they're not lying to everybody else out there. But of course, we expect them to come clean, publish, come up with all of those documents. If government says, well, we sponsored what, how many? 100? Is that to say that 100 is from the presidency? Is it from ministries? Is it from agencies? Because even if it's from state government, that's government. If it's from MDAs, that's government. If it's from presidency, that's government. So all of those things are things that we want proper breakdown from them compared to the lists that several other people, including us, have. So those are the things that we just want to go ahead and clarify. So maybe we'll wait and see how many or what kinds of information they come through with, as a matter of fact, on this particular one, so that at least, because whatever happens, they will need to explain to the people who are those that went there, because there's a list out there in terms of even registration, on-site registration. Because, just as you said, if you went as an NGO, yes, you'll be categorized as part of Nigeria that came there. Maybe you're not in government, clearly. So those are the kind of things that we're looking to see how that comes through. Is that part of what you expect the authorities to also publish?
The authority have the honors of proof to Nigeria. We are lucky today. We have the voice to challenge the government to tell us which one is the fact. You see, this particular government and some of the past government are very good in keeping information away from the Nigerian people. Even if they try to cook up numbers now, it won't work. Because now what we will do, of course, is to, when they they bring out their actual numbers and give us details of the breakdown and say to Nigerian people, this is the X amount of money that was spent or budgeted for this particular movement, and so numbers went from each ministry on each department or so. This is now a confirmed statement of proof by the government. We will now put it against some of the information that we have or we may have or we may investigate to know this is exactly the numbers of what was sent, and then it will be their words against ours. But as it is now, Nigerians are under the fact that this particular government has embedded itself in wasteful spending in the midst of nowhere. You are servicing a budget of 8.28 trillion naira and a deficit budget of 9-something trillion naira, which is, of course, unbelievable. And these are some of the things that we cannot continue to be wallowing in poverty and debt while the government officials enjoying themselves at the expense of the people.
So has your party, either your principal or yourself, have you done any of such scrutiny previously regarding the previous trips that Nigeria also made, including the presidency, maybe to Germany, to Saudi Arabia, to UN? Have you turned on your searchlight previously? Did you find anything untoward?
Well, we did. With some of the things that we did was that some of our Nigerians, you know, Nigerians are vastly knowledgeable and they travel everywhere. You may be surprised that the number of the GOP 28 is more than one, according to like you say, you group Nigerians that travel for that particular program, maybe more than 1,411. I can assure you that. Because there are different groups, different people who must have traveled. And so, over the years, we become more interested in how the spending of the government is against what we have as a country. So our people, those partners, young boys and girls, very young boys and girls who are living and staying outside this particular country, don't forget, Dubai is just like Ojo Elegba for Nigeria. Many Nigerians are in Dubai, many. And most of them are almost workers within this particular system, because most of the Dubai citizens may not engage in the working of that particular organization or host country. So many of them may be Nigerians. I'm sure there are Nigerians in that particular organization. And so therefore, information that they are looking at why their government is spending so much at the expense of them having to travel outside Nigeria to Dubai to go and work hard just to make a living because the country is not stable enough for them to make an income. And here they are all flexing, going to shopping malls, going to artificial beach, going to fanciful hotels, and Nigerians are saying that. So definitely they will raise questions. So our investigation will rely on this particular information that Nigerians themselves give out. And now what we are asking that from that particular information, it is now left for this particular government to come clean or be careful. Because the Nigerian youth and the Nigerian citizens are on their radar. That one is sure.
One of the things that, one of the natural questions that comes to me here is to ask the question, what, in your opinion, would be an appropriate number that should have escorted the president to COP28? I remember reading a report which says that an African country, president of an African country, I'm not sure whether it was Uganda or Kenya, personally took responsibility to look at the numbers and say, look, cut this number from whatever number of hundreds of people that were supposed to go with him, almost 1,000 or maybe about 1,000 people that were supposed to go with him, cut it below the number 100, below the number 100. So from your own understanding, having been to COP and having a fair understanding of what happens at COP meetings, what would have been an ideal number that should have accompanied the president to Dubai?
When we prioritize our reason for going to COP, we have very serious problem in the country. One, it has to do with the issue of unemployment for the Nigerian youth. Two, we think about the issue of power sector. Three, we think about how to diversify our economy from a one-legged economy, which is petroleum, to other. And then four, we talk about the issue of security. Now, if the government can be able to surpass this particular four very important thing, let me add the last one, education. Now, five, in each ministry, you have people who are, saddled with the responsibility of data gathering, suggestion on how we can be able to achieve going over these particular 5 items that I mentioned within a threshold of 50. You cannot go more than that. Within a threshold of 50, it makes sensible reason, so that you can be able to spend and you can be able to connect, even as we speak right now, with all of these humongous delegates. Mr. President may not even be able to have a data or connectivity of what were you able to achieve in the power sector with so person. What were you able to achieve in the educational sector? What have you been able to bring in from the security sector. These are very concrete information that Mr. President needs to take decisions on. But at this point in time, I can tell you by the time it's the Jamboree visit, when you come back home, there may not be any information. And before you even get the information, maybe it might be 6 or 7 months. Other things would have overtaken it. So go with a sizable number that you can manage, and the people will see the prudency in your expenditure, and then it comes with results. It is very important. There's a communication that is being filled, because we have a communication gap between the elect and the elect and the electorate, because they don't even know what government does.
Well, that's an interesting angle to it, and we'll definitely come back to that because I'm quite big on communication myself. But do you think that if the president or the federal government, in the light of, or perhaps in the name, or under the guise of an inclusive government, do you think the president maybe could have invited opposition parties such as your party and the PDP at least to accompany him to the COP? Because you know that the federal government thinks quite highly of COP28, because even in the budget speech, the president gave quite a bit of time to talking about the importance of it and the need for funding for agencies of government to garner as much funding as possible to ensure that we get the best of COP28. Do you think it would have been, a good idea for the government to have all hands on deck, so to speak, on that trip to Dubai for COP28?
In a stable society where there's no legitimate issue, which was being chanted at the National Assembly, trying to shower in legitimacy and all, when there's no legitimate issue on it, it would have been a very ideal situation where you seek for ideas, consult. Some people may give you, they may even have some of the technocrats who have very fundamental ideas on how it runs in the COP. You see, most of the problem we have, having been to that particular program once, I noticed that we go in with some of our good ideas that we want to sell to the world. As we speak now, my brother, we are servicing consumption as a country. We're not servicing production, just like our principal, His Excellency Peter Obi, would say. We don't go out to think that we are exporting something that is valuable, that can bring in income to the country. We only use any opportunity that comes as to say we are going there to a kind of a jamboree. I've never been to Dubai. So this is an opportunity. Since I'm working under this particular, this is a program that, because letters will be sent to each of the ministries, then the ministries will generate ideas of people who will travel, and then they will spend money. So for me, it could have been a good idea under a legitimately recognized and acceptable government by all, at least certain number. It may look very, very funny. Some people say, why are we still on this particular job? Because we are not yet convinced, even though we accept the ruling of the Supreme Court, but we are not yet convinced. So for us, even if we are invited, we will look at it as we are giving legitimacy to the government. But as we are speaking right now, what I'm saying, what our principal has said, is a free consultancy. And he has continuously been saying it. For those who are smart in thinking, they will now start taking seriously some of the things that we are saying, what our principal is saying, some of what Nigerians are saying, as a free consultancy for them to make amends and correct it. So whether we are invited or not invited, we are already contributing. If they feel that it's valuable for them to take, let them take it, so that we can now focus our attention on criticizing other things. Criticisms lead to improvement for those who want to improve in their governance.
Okay, just one quick one. When you talk about legitimacy, I'm looking at legitimacy, the meaning of legitimacy from the Oxford Language Dictionary, and it says it is conformity to the law or to rules. The second meaning says ability to be defended with logic or justification. This issue has gone as far as the highest court in the land, which one might argue is the highest level of legitimacy in Nigeria. Are you saying that the Supreme Court is not strong enough to give legitimacy to a government?
I thank you very much for your last definition. You said logic. In this situation, what we are talking about, does this particular definition of governance in our country today define anything logic? Does it in any way? So it's a question I will throw back to you. It doesn't at all. So, but as Democrats, we have already conformed with what is provided against the law. And the law says that if you are taking this matter to the highest court in the land, which of course is under scrutiny at the moment, you will of course have nothing to question. And our principal has said we have come to our last bus stop in the process. But that doesn't mean that I, as a person now, has really accepted that particular, but I'm taking it based on the provisions of law. So that's where we stand. But logically, it's completely in the shortest thinking of a human being. How could you explain to me where I go to court, I obtain a certified true copy of a document of the processes of the election, and my own court that was supposed to be in the protection of the law, which as I speak up to today, the CTC of that particular judgment has not been given to us based on the law that they are supposed to even protect, that even they are supposed to be the one that execute, that it has a certain limit of date and time in which you can give me a certified true copy of the judgment you passed on me. That has not been done as we speak right now. And then here we are, we're going to say what is the legitimacy of our court. And obviously, it does not make any sensible logic. It does not, based on your definition.
I mean, I'm just wondering, did your principal directly, or yourself being the spokesperson, do you have direct contact? Did you reach out to anyone in government saying, listen, can we have this, and that? Just, I mean, probably before or even for this purpose?
Of course, we have not written to the government, quite true, but then we are all living as Nigerians. Did the government also actually come clean to say this is a movement that we are going? You know, in a proper, maybe in the parliamentary system or in the document, the Freedom of Information Bill already been passed. The information should have been given to the common Nigerian because there is no connect. I am a Nigerian just like you and I, and just like any person in position of power. It's my right to be informed what you use my own tax payment to do. Even if how do you expend it? It's my right to know. If I don't pay my tax, you will ask me a question. Tanko, you have not paid your tax. I have a landed property in Abuja. Just recently, the Minister of the Federal Capital Authority alerted everybody that you have not paid your land rent. You have not paid. And so time, I'm giving you 2 weeks to pay, otherwise I will revoke your license. These are information already for them to get the money. And I went and I paid. What that money will be used for, I'm supposed to know. If the money is supposed to be used for creating more roads, better environment, water, electricity, and then good school, public school for the Nigerian people, I must know. I must ask question what the money is being used for. And it's my right.
Okay.
It should be given to me.
When Mr. Peter Obi said that they're going to now effectively play the role of opposition, it's not going to go away. There were, I mean, it appears as though this is going to be what we expect from him moving forward. But I do remember too, at that time, there were some obedience who also thought, why would he make that kind of statement? What does opposition do? Just issue statements to what government has said. So they didn't like that kind of scenario. Did you get that feedback, and what was your reaction to it?
No, I have not gotten any negative feedback. In fact, to tell you the information I am getting is that we are not even doing enough. What they want, what some of the people may want, is some of them physical demonstration and being on the street, which is also within the confines of our democratic process. But the truth about it is that, with all due respect to this particular government, they have a vicious way of doing things. Remember, there are issues that some of us raised, and before you know it, there were statements being echoed by the secretary of the APC that we should be arrested, even though we are exercising our fundamental democratic rights. So if we go for another as if we are scared, remember, we have led various demonstrations in this country. I, in particular, was the field marshal of Save Nigeria Group. I have led in almost all, if not all, labor movement demonstration in the interest of the Nigerian people. Some of our colleagues have been killed in this particular process. Some of them have been jailed in this particular. I'm a product of Ganifa Wemi, a protege of Balada Musa, and of course, Otto Nwanko. These are things that we have done At the point in time when there were issues of fuel subsidy, remember we were on the street with Balaro Musa, the Nigerian Labour Congress, in the street of Kaduna, and particularly myself, Shehu Sani, Balaro Musa, and even the custom director as at that time, Hamid Ali. So we have been doing things for the interest of the country, and we have remained consistent. So as far as the Nigerian people want to see more of this particular action, they are looking for heroes that can emancipate the country. The country is dying gradually.
All right, Mr. Zanko. So I guess that's an inkling of what to expect from Labour Party moving forward. So we do thank you, Dr. Yunusa Tanko, Chief Spokesman, Labour Party's Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Yes, and I think the government said that they will respond to inquiry tomorrow, so they will be here to speak to some of these figures, the figures that are out there, and what the scenario is. So look forward to that one tomorrow. Now, we do have some messages coming through. This is from Victor, who says, Nigeria's system of democracy is unique because we Nigerians don't even know what democracy looks or feels like. Our government treats us like we owe them. So we, the masses, are totally irrelevant to how governance runs. We think this is sad.
Well, this is one which is an email from Hussein, and he says he's writing from Surulere. He says, the public outcry trailing the large number of the nation's delegation to COP28 is not unexpected, especially at a time when hunger and poverty is an alarming rate in the same country. However, if we start seeing concrete benefits of our participation at the event in due course, then some Nigerians may change their opinions on it. That's coming from Hussein.
George, also in another email, says about the Nigerian budget issues, we have to start telling ourselves the truth about the realities on ground in our society today. We all should know that none of the budgets in Nigeria has impacted positively on the lives of ordinary citizens of Nigeria. I honestly wonder why a country would come out with a yearly budget, including the supplementary, and yet our roads, hospitals, unemployment, and food supplies are in very bad shape.
Well, I got this one from Bashir Bala, who says, Nigeria is competing with China in sending large number of delegates of over 1,400 at COP28. We hope Nigeria or Nigerian, I think Nigeria will continue to compete with other developed countries in other developmental activities, not only tourism tours. Okay, we'll put all those questions through to the government when they do come in. So just stay with us at that time because they will be here to respond to all of this response and outcry and anger on the part of Nigerians. So that is the show today. We do thank you all for watching. We'll see you tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain. What's up? Goodbye.
I'm Nel Tagbe. Have a good day.
And I'm Ayo Makinde. Have a productive one.